you talking about?
Yeah, migrant children are missing.
No, we don't know the news. I don't know. That's Fox News. That's Fox News. Listen, I need you to save the party.
You should pay attention.
Save the party.
All right, guys, so we got to talk about an extremely disturbing double standard that I see developing in our society. And I talked about this a little bit in my last video when I talked about the lawyer for the so-called city bike Karen coming out and announcing that they're probably going to be suing the mainstream race hustling media for false accusations of racism and doxing this pregnant nurse based off these false allegations that she was stealing a bike from black teenagers, which again was a silly story from the get-go. But what's happening here is that the left has moved the goalpost. They're saying that no, white people cannot cry or scream for help or act erratically when faced with being victims of a crime done by a black person. So if you're a white person and harm has been done to you by somebody black, you cannot cry for help, okay? If you cry for help, if you call the police, if you do anything that might get that black person in trouble, then you are a racist, okay? You're taking a chance, and you can be doxxed and harassed, and your life can be ruined for doing this, because apparently white people are dangerous to black folks, okay? This is the narrative that's been pushed in the media, and that brings me to this video that I want to do about Marjorie Taylor Greene and Jamaal Bowman. Two people who are in Congress, right? And sometimes it seems like our Congress is more of a high school than actually, you know, grown people that are there to legislate and make laws. But again, this is the country that we're living in. They got into an argument outside of the Capitol about George Santos. Now, you guys should know that George Santos has been charged, federal charges more specifically, with fraud, money laundering, theft of public funds, and making false statements to Congress. Again, George Santos is a guy who happens to be a Hispanic GOP congressman from New York, okay? I believe he's also gay too. The Democrats have focused all their energy on him, okay? They're trying to get him kicked out of Congress. And to me, in my opinion, I'm not saying that any of these things aren't true, right? I'm not even defending him. I'm just saying it seems like there's a whole lot of homophobia and racism and xenophobia coming from the Democrats, because they told us that any criticism of those people who are so-called minorities, right, is a form of bigotry. So I'm just saying there's a whole lot of bigotry being directed towards George Santos. I find it to be absolutely hilarious. But anyways, these people were outside basically protesting AOC and Jamaal Bowman for George Santos to resign, to step down, okay? They want him to be kicked out of Congress. And this exchange right here between Marjorie Taylor Greene and Jamaal Bowman happened during this protest. So I want to go ahead and show you this real quick.
Save the party. The party's hanging by a thread.
We gotta get rid of Biden.
The party's hanging by a thread. You gotta save the party. Listen, no more QAnon, no more MAGA,
no more CNN,
no more debt ceiling nonsense. Come on now, save the party.
No, we gotta
save America. Save the children.
Save the country.
Do something about guns.
Right, so close the border.
Come on, invest in education.
Listen,
I need you to save the party.
You should pay attention.
Save the party.
Had to have so much security. There was not enough. I was swarmed. It's all on video. Everyone can see this. But I will tell you what's on video is Jamaal Bowman shouting at the top of his lungs, cursing, calling me a horrible, calling me a white supremacist, which I take great offense to. That is like calling a person of color the N-word, which should never happen. Calling me a white supremacist is equal to that, and that is wrong. Jamaal Bowman was down there cursing at me, telling me to get the F out of there, and he was leading the mob right outside the vehicle I was sitting in. We have this all on video. And then on the Capitol steps yesterday, he was the one that approached me. Even CNN reported that. Yelling, shouting, raising his voice. He has aggressive, his physical mannerisms are aggressive. And he just recently shoved Thomas Massey just outside the House chamber. I think there's a lot of concern about Jamaal Bowman. So, and I am concerned about it. I feel threatened by him. He not only led a mob there, but his boisterous lies.
This country has a history of characterizing black men who are outspoken, who stand their ground, and who push back as being threatening or intimidating. So she's not even using a dog whistle. She's using a bullhorn to put a target on my back to the people that she refers to as MAGA people out there who might want to cause harm.
Yeah, so I'm going to get into the cackling hands and their reaction, okay, to this and my opinion on this. But as you saw there, they were arguing on the steps. And then afterwards, Marjorie Taylor Greene was asked about this. And she didn't like the fact that she allegedly was called a white supremacist. And she compared being called a white supremacist to being called an N-word, okay? And Jamaal Bowman then, you know, responded to that and said that, well, Marjorie Taylor Greene is trying to put a target on my back because she's a white lady, right? Basically saying that she felt uncomfortable with me, okay? So I'm going to talk about this, okay? But first, I want to play some reaction here from some people in the media who are upset with Marjorie Taylor Greene. They're melting down over this comparison that Marjorie Taylor Greene made. And one of those people is Charlamagne the God. And I want you guys just to listen to this racial rant that he goes on in response to this. Take a look.
To the bigoted Barbie known as Marjorie Taylor Greene. Oh, the mayonnaise is heavy on this one, people. This human jar of Hellman's Marjorie Taylor Greene is out of her white devil damn mind. Marjorie says things like, you know, the forest fires in California were started by laser beams from space that are controlled by Jewish people. She says things like Bill and Hillary Clinton had John F. Kennedy Jr. killed because he was a political rival. She says things like President Obama is a secret Muslim. And she says things like a plane probably didn't crash into the Pentagon on 9/11. She's actually a person who should probably have a YouTube channel more than she should have a seat in Congress. But yesterday she spoke on a confrontation she had outside the Capitol with a brother I like a lot, Congressman Jamaal Bowman. Drop on the clues bombs for Congressman Jamaal Bowman. Now, the confrontation started because the House Republicans deflected a Democratic motion to expel the federally indicted New York Representative George Santos. And as Santos spoke to reporters, Jamaal Bowman does what he always does, you know, and that started some good trouble, you know, some good disruption because he called out that George Santos should resign. And Marjorie Taylor Greene didn't like that. Let's listen.
Yeah, so what I find to be fascinating about this is that Charlamagne the God, first and foremost, is basically doing exactly what people like him would melt down about if being done to black folks, using racist rhetoric, okay? I mean, just straight up insulting Marjorie Taylor Greene based off the color of her skin. Again, only black people can get away with that, right? Only black people can get away with that. Again, if that was a white person insulting a black person based off the color of their skin, do you think that white person would have a platform like Charlamagne the God? No, right? Again, so don't let anybody ever tell you there's not a double standard. Second of all, what he mentioned that is that he admitted that Jamaal Bowman has a history of causing conflict with people in Congress. Okay, we've done videos about this before. This guy basically he's very aggressive. He approaches people, he ambushes them, and this is not the first time he's done that to Marjorie Taylor Greene. In fact, he did it to Marjorie Taylor Greene in New York when she was there to support President Trump. Take a look at this.
Crime should be held accountable. Congressman. Whoa. Sorry. I think you know.
Now let's talk about the truth. Now let's talk about the truth. Get out of here. Get out of here. Get out of here. Get out of here. Now let's talk about the truth. Get her out of here.
Congressman. What inspired that today?
Jamaal Bowman.
What inspired that today,
I
Congressman?
was born and raised in New York City. This is the city that I love. It's a city focused on hard work and love for all people. We will never accept hateful rhetoric in our city. Any rhetoric that is divisive, any rhetoric that uplifts white supremacy, we are pushing back against that in all its forms. Marjorie Taylor Greene needs to take her ass back to Washington.
Yeah, so as you saw there, Marjorie Taylor Greene has a history of run-ins with this guy, Jamaal Bowman. Jamaal Bowman has a history of basically running up on members of Congress and trying to argue with them, get in their face, be confrontational. Okay, again, I've done videos about this. I've shown this guy doing this before in the past. He doesn't do anything else in Congress. So, I mean, hey, I guess he feels like that's the best thing he can do to be effective, try to be a social media superstar. I mean, we got people on the left and the right that do that, right? That literally in Congress to be social media superstars. But regardless, I'm just saying, he has a history of doing that. I don't think it's unreasonable for Marjorie Taylor Greene to say, hey, you know what? I feel like this guy is harassing me. Again, I understand. I'm not trying to, set this precedent here where, women can just, cry foul just because they feel like a man is in their presence. I don't think that that's what Marjorie Taylor Greene is doing here. I really do believe that this guy is a problem because he doesn't just do it to her. He does it to other members of Congress as well, too. And I don't blame her for saying that, look, I feel like this guy might be threatening, okay? I don't think it has much to do with his skin color. It has to do with the fact that he has a history of doing this. So, without further ado, let's react to the cackling hens, okay, and what they have to say about this, because, of course, they're going to play this same old tap dance where they try to pretend that Marjorie Taylor Greene is actually putting Jamaal Bowman in danger. He's the one that's actually in danger. So let's watch this.
Okay, first of all, the N-word is so offensive.
Yeah.
And it refers to skin color, basically. The white supremacist is a philosophy, an idea that things are not equal. And the fact that she could not say the real word shows you how volatile that word is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay? And by the way, just before you talk about it, she has appeared at a conference founded by white nationalists, something that's created by Nick Fuentes, who's basically a Hitler supporter, I believe, isn't he?
And
Correct me if I'm wrong.
she has said anti-Semitic things.
What?
She has said many anti-Semitic things as well.
And she's trying to start a caucus within the GOP to promote uniquely Anglo-Saxon political traditions. Okay.
Sounds like a little white supremacist.
Sounds like it, doesn't it?
It feels a little white supremacy.
If it walks like a white supremacist.
Yeah, it feels a little white supremacist. I mean,
Yeah, so before Sunny gets into her ridiculous argument, I want to say this about what Joy Behar is saying. The term white supremacist today is being used the same way that the N-word was used in the past. Now, some people may think what I'm saying here is controversial, right? They may not agree with it, but that's just my opinion. The word, the phrase, the term white supremacist is being thrown on people as a slur. It is being used in a derogatory way towards people, okay? And I definitely can understand why Marjorie Taylor Greene would be offended by the fact that Jamaal Bowman or anybody would call her a white supremacist, because essentially what you're doing when you call somebody a white supremacist is that you're saying that they are a racist, that they are a dangerous person to so-called people of color, right? What's happening is that they're painting Marjorie Taylor Greene as a dangerous person. And that's the irony of this. They're totally fine with the label white supremacist, which, again, is a way to try to smear somebody as dangerous, particularly for people who are not white. But they're upset. They're mad and they're upset because Marjorie Taylor Greene gave them a taste of their own medicine and basically said, well, I feel like this guy, Jamaal Bowman, is dangerous because of his actual actions, right? The things that he's doing, the way that he approaches me, the way that he yells, his mannerisms, I feel like he may be a dangerous person. So again, I want you to understand the dynamic that's being created here. It's totally fine to point out Marjorie Taylor Greene as a dangerous person because she's white. To say, hey, you're a white supremacist. Okay, which again is being used as a slur. I think it is the N-word for white people, right? In 2023, to be quite honest with you, it really is. Totally fine to do that. But if a white person turns around and says, hey, I feel like this person's put me in danger, if that person happens to be black, she didn't use a slur. She didn't call him any names. She said that based off his actions. Actions that he has a history of doing towards people. All of a sudden, these people want to melt down and cry about it. That's the double standard. They really want you to believe that Marjorie Taylor Greene is the threat, okay? She's a threat. The white woman is the threat, okay? And that the black man's life is in danger because of white women. This is what they want you to believe.
and I think Congressman Bowman said.
Okay, Nick Fuentes is a white nationalist. I stand corrected.
Okay.
Neo-Nazis seem safe,
Yeah,
but okay.
It seems to fall in line with the
Call it what you
ideology. But, I think Congressman Bowman said what needed to be said, which was this has been happening for decades, or perhaps even longer than that, centuries, where a white woman says something like, he feels threatening to me, he's harassing me.
Yeah.
And that can end in the death of a black man. And she knows that. So that was a dog whistle, it was a bullhorn, everything that he said.
And white supremacist is not. Again, how is it that It's not okay for Marjorie Taylor Greene as a white woman to say, hey, I feel threatened by this guy who has a history of running up on me, right, and making all types of commotion and noise. Not okay for her to do that. And then again, I can definitely understand the argument of, well, maybe she's over-exaggerating. I get that. I'm totally sympathetic to that argument if you want to just have that argument, okay? If you want to take race out of it and make it like a feminist thing, or a woman that's just crying because a man is close to her thing, honestly, I might get on board with you. I could agree with you on that. She might be overreacting from that perspective. But once you start to throw race in it like this, and you reveal your hypocrisy, yeah, this is where I'm just like, nah, I can't go along with this. Okay, I can't go along with this. Because I can make the same argument that you're putting Marjorie Taylor Greene in danger by calling her white supremacist. Because again, that insinuates that she's a threat to society. Again, it's just amazing that these people just, the cognitive dissonance here is just amazing. It's stunning. It really is. It blows my mind. This is the double standard that's being created. They're telling white people, you better not say anything that could make it seem like a black person's a threat to you, even if they're actually a threat, right? Don't do it, okay?
But I think that we need to look at her behavior. This is someone who was removed from some of the committees because of her comments and her behavior. I think we have a clip of what she did even before she got into Congress in terms of harassing other Congress people.
That's right.
We're going to visit Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Crazy eyes. Crazy eyes. Nutty Cortez. Okay, hang with us, guys. You need to stop being a baby and stop locking your door and come out and face the American citizens that you serve. If you want to be a big girl, you need to get rid of your diaper and come out and be able to talk to the American citizens instead of us having to use a flap, a little flap.
It's kind of like hers. It's kind of
Who's she talking to?
That feels
AOC?
very aggressive to me.
And you can make that argument, right? I'm not going to sit here and say that, if AOC came out and said, hey, you know what, I feel like, this is harassment or whatever, I'm not going to necessarily disagree with it, okay? I'm not going to disagree with it. But I'm just saying, if you're going to call it that way, then be equal on both sides. If you're saying what Marjorie Taylor Greene did is harassment and AOC has the right to feel harassed, okay, well, what's the difference between what Marjorie Taylor Greene is saying now about Jamaal Bowman, right? There's no difference. So again, I'm just saying, you can argue that, hey, maybe, Marjorie Taylor Greene has put herself in a position where, she was doing this to other people and now people are doing it to her. Okay, fine. Make that argument. But let's not sit here and try to pretend that Marjorie Taylor Greene is putting Jamaal Bowman's life in danger because she's basically saying that, hey, I feel harassed and threatened. That's my problem.
Right? That feels very aggressive to me. She also has said that if she ran the January 6th Capitol attack, we would have won. She also, Representative Cori Bush had to move her office away from Greene after Greene and her staff berated her in a hallway. So this is someone that's very confrontational.
Well, what happened with that is that, again, they were both going at each other, right? So yeah, let's not leave that out because Cori Bush was going at her too.
Very aggressive.
What about the tape of her harassing David Hogg?
David Hogg.
She did that with the
There she is. She's stalking David Hogg, who's the anti-gun advocate. He was one of the survivors at Parkland.
She also kicked a reporter once, just kind of tripped her. But here, I worked on Capitol Hill in Congress for quite a few years, and it makes me sad how much it's changed. It feels like people are running to get elected, some people, to Congress to become political influencers and to become trending on social media, to fundraise off of it, to get booked on partisan news. She's the worst offender, but that's...
Bro, come on. Look, again, I think what she's saying here is valid. But I don't think she's the worst offender. I think AOC, everybody in the squad is probably in that same category. They're all in the same category, okay? They all really don't do much in regards to legislation in Congress. They're just social media superstars. So I definitely agree with her in general in regards to what's happening here, what's going on, why you're seeing it. But again, let's not pretend that it's not something that happens on both sides. It happens on both sides.
It's just a degradation of what should be one of the most deliberative bodies in our country. We're weeks away from a debt ceiling default, the first in our history. If it happens, they'll have catastrophic consequences for all Americans. And she's out there picking a fight, doing her whole showmanship thing.
Okay, well, why Democrats focus on George Santos? What's more important? See, this is why I can't stand this woman, right? Because she's so one-sided, okay? Democrats right now are focusing on George Santos instead of the debt ceiling, right? Republicans are not allowed to focus on anything besides the debt ceiling. Democrats who have the presidency, have the Senate, right? Oh, no, they can focus on everything except the debt ceiling, and it's the Republicans' fault, right? Republicans are the only ones that's supposed to be focused on that. Again, it's just amazing the double standard here. And that's my problem. These same people, Jamaal Bowman just said, he was like, oh, we shouldn't be focused on the debt ceiling. Right? Let's not focus on that. We need to focus on George Santos. And it's like, bro, the country's on the verge of default. What are you talking about? George Santos is not more important than the debt ceiling. But again, Alyssa Fair Griffin's not going to mention that.
It's become performative and embarrassing. It makes
how
good,
she makes her name is all performative.
But I think it makes like good, smart, serious people not even want to bother running because that's your colleague.
Well, I mean, when you're yelling through a mail flap, like, I mean, whatever. But the other thing is, like a week ago, remember when we were almost going to talk about Fox News getting really upset at President Biden for saying white supremacists were a problem, and they said this is the most divisive term. White supremacy should not be divisive. No. That would imply two sides to this, and there's not two sides to this. So to compare a term about white supremacy and the very oppressors that created the other word, she has lost on both sides. But the fact that white supremacists offends her when we talk about it as one of the greatest domestic threats by the FBI.
White supremacy, #1. It should be the easiest thing to wake up any day of the week and condemn. It's just like it's
you can't even.
Yeah, well, that's the problem is that you're labeling people white supremacists who are not white supremacists. That's the problem, and they pretend they don't know that because they want to label people white supremacists without anybody being able to push back. Again, if you push back against being labeled a white supremacist, then you're a white supremacist, right? Apparently, that's just how this works, okay? But again, my point is this: the double standard here that is being created, where if you happen to be white, you can't say that, hey, I feel like my life is in danger or that I'm being harassed or threatened. If you're accusing somebody of doing that happens to be not white, you can't say that, right? That is not acceptable in 2023. But if you're black, right, or if you're any other color, you're more than free to say whatever you want, okay? To call somebody a white supremacist with no evidence, okay, which again insinuates that person is a threat, okay? It's particularly to non-white folks. You're allowed to do that, and I think that's not fair, right? Like that's not how this works, okay? The term white supremacy is basically being used as a slur. It is the modern day N-word towards white people, okay? It is. And again, people might find that to be controversial. People might find that, to be, a little bit over the top. But the history is being made today. People aren't going to see it until 20, 30 years, 40 years down the road. And we look back at history and say, wasn't it silly that we were calling a bunch of people white supremacists for no reason? Right? Simply because they disagree with Democrats. We were calling them white supremacists. The same way we look back at history and say, wasn't it wrong that we were calling people based off their race? The N-word, right? We'll call them a slur, okay? Basically trying to imply that they're a threat to society just because of their skin color or just because they disagree with us. It's just amazing how that works. The cognitive dissonance is amazing. Let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a black conservative perspective. Peace.